I think that sometimes if we learn how to live our faith better and learn how to invite and include others, especially young people, in the life of the church, that there will continue to be some vocation.
When a Swiss guard was in distress, Pope Leo XIV broke centuries of Vatican tradition to help, and what he did next left the entire Vatican in shock. At 10:15 a.m. on May 11, 2025, it was still early. Only 3 days had passed since the Sign Chapel's chimney had started releasing white smoke, and Pope Leo XIV had become a name known around the world. Inside the Apostolic Palace, things were still settling. Staff whispered to each other with uncertainty, security schedules were still being updated, cardinals moved slowly as if adjusting to a new kind of weight. But Pope Leo moved differently. He walked through the Vatican halls like someone used to the steep roads of the Peruvian mountains, slow, careful, always focused more on the people around him than on the famous artwork. That morning, as he passed the Swiss guard post outside the Eastern Corridor, he had just finished his quiet prayer time in the chapel. The guard stood tall, perfectly still, trained not to shake, except for one man named Harry Cook. He wasn't careless or inexperienced. In fact, he was known as one of the best, steady hands, fluent in 4 languages, always on time, always in uniform. But something was wrong that morning. His hands were gripping his halberd so tightly his knuckles had turned white, his jaw was clenched, and though he stood straight, his eyes trembled like they were holding something back. Pope Leo saw it instantly. He didn't ask questions or call for help. 2 nearby officials stopped in surprise as the Pope walked directly toward the guard. He raised a hand to signal the officers to stay back. He wanted honesty now, not protocol. He took one step, then another, and said in a quiet voice full of concern, "My son, what is weighing on your heart?" Harry blinked. His body shook at the unexpected kindness. It wasn't fear of authority. He tried to hold it in. "Your Holiness," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. He tried to stay silent at first, but he couldn't, not when the voice asking him sounded like it understood his pain. "Your Holiness," he repeated, his voice cracking slightly. "My son," he stopped, swallowed hard. "He's gone." Pope Leo shook his head, not confused but sorrowful. Harry continued, trying so hard to stay composed. His hands were shaking now. "He was taken from our home at night. I don't know how. I'm afraid for his life," Harry said. At this point the entire hallway was quiet. That moment seemed to last forever. Harry's armor made a soft sound against the marble as his posture wavered just enough to be noticed. He hadn't really breathed since he found his son's bed empty, and now his chest shook. Pope Leo stepped closer. Guards were never supposed to stand too close to the Pope, but he reached out and placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Steel met leather and linen. Then the Pope remembered something that would change everything. Stay tuned. As Pope Leo looked into Harry's face, he suddenly remembered Peru 2010, the earthquake, the rescue tents, a young man with a Swiss Red Cross patch sewn onto his backpack and a homemade bandage around his head. Then he said, "Harry." The Pope's eyes were sharp, but his voice was calm. Harry looked up, confused. How did this Pope know his name? "You were there." "Chicago," Pope Leo said. "The school collapsed. You gave me a shovel." Harry blinked like someone had opened a door he had locked away long ago. Slowly he nodded. "I was a volunteer back then," Harry said quietly. "After my wife died, I had nowhere else to go." His throat tightened. "She died giving birth to Joseph, the same son who was now missing." At first Pope Leo said nothing. The silence spoke for him. He kept his hand on Harry's shoulder. Then he finally said, "She gave life and she gave you life. We won't let that life be taken now." At that moment there were no titles, no robes, no authority, just one father listening to another, one grieving, one understanding. All rules faded beneath the golden ceilings of the Vatican Palace. Pope Leo refused to walk away. Instead he stood beside a soldier who was breaking apart inside his armor. Before he became Pope, Robert Provost was a missionary in Chicago, Peru. And the night the earth shook, it didn't do so gently. Just after 9:41 p.m. on January 13, 2010, a 6.6 magnitude earthquake hit the town. Hospitals cracked open, homes made of clay bricks fell, school buildings were crushed under broken concrete and metal roofs. After the storm had stopped, there was silence, and then digging. Father Robert was one of the first to arrive. His hands were bruised, his cassock torn, and a headlamp was strapped to his forehead like a miner's. He wasn't a bishop, wasn't famous, wasn't Pope Leo. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He had stayed behind after a young woman's mother died in a nearby village. His mission had officially ended 2 weeks earlier, but he'd promised to help with the funeral. That delay saved lives. By midnight, Chicago's town square had become a rescue center. Locals came in barefoot, holding blankets and bits of their homes. Then came the volunteers from Switzerland, Bolivia, Brazil. That's when Father Robert saw him, a young man, maybe 22 or 23. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He had a wrap around his forearm and a Red Cross vest covered in dust. He didn't speak much Spanish, but his eyes said everything. His name, as we said earlier, was Harry Cook. He didn't wait for orders. He grabbed a crowbar and dropped to his knees beside Father Robert. At first they said nothing. They just worked, moving stone after stone, one breath at a time, one brick at a time. "There are 3 children under this wall," Father Robert said. One of them cried. "I heard it." Harry nodded and dug faster. The hours passed in a blur. By 3:22 a.m., they had cleared a full meter of rubble. Their knees burned. Their hands bled. Dust filled the air. Then they heard the sound again, a child's voice whispering in a Swiss accent. Harry leaned in and shouted, "No, don't give up, Dermis. Stay awake." They pulled out the first child, a girl with a broken arm and wide, frightened eyes. Then the second. Then the third, unconscious but breathing. At that moment, the news was all over the place, that 2 strangers had saved 3 children from death by stone. When it was over, they didn't talk. They knelt in the broken square and said Psalm 23 in 2 languages, Harry in German, Robert in Spanish. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," they said together. But it did not end there. They kept working the next day, and the next. They moved bodies, set up food stations, cleared rubble, prayed with grieving mothers. For 12 days, they shared the same cot, the same water, the same pain. One night, while sitting by a fire made from broken furniture, Harry opened up. "My wife died giving birth to our son in Geneva," he said. "Her name was Joy." He looked away from the priest and into the flames. "I came here to forget. But all I do here is hold the dying." Father Robert placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not running away," he said. "You're walking through it. And God walks there too." Harry cried that night, not loudly, not like someone breaking apart, but like someone who had held a river inside for too long. Father Robert didn't quote poetry or preach. He just stayed beside him until the tears stopped. By January 26th, the last rescue tent was taken down. The foreign teams were thanked. The roads were cleared. And when it came time to part, they didn't speak. No big goodbye. But before they separated, Robert pressed something into Harry's hand, a small wooden cross carved from the ruins of a destroyed chapel. "Hold this," he said, "when you feel like your faith is gone. And remember, sometimes salvation looks like 2 dusty men carrying stones." They never saw each other again, not until May 11th, 2025, when one of those men stood trembling in a guard's uniform, praying for a miracle, and the other wore the white cassock of Pope Leo XIV. Now, on the morning of May 11th, 2025, after Harry ran out of words, Pope Leo XIV made a surprising choice. He didn't call the Secretary of State. He didn't send Harry to the army or to the Vatican's legal office. Instead, he looked Harry in the eyes, his friend, a grieving father, and said quietly, "We'll do whatever it takes to find him. I don't forget what fathers carry, even when the world does." Less than an hour later, at exactly 11:09 a.m., Pope Leo canceled all of his appointments.